do you have here? Edgerunner Gaming HD doing a professional wrestling video of all things? But I thought you said you hated pro wrestling. I thought you said that you don't want to talk professional wrestling anymore. I said I don't want to talk modern professional wrestling anymore. I don't want to talk about modern day professional wrestling anymore. But never did I say that I didn't want to talk about old school wrestling. And I figured that it would be fitting to do a video talking about a show, a specific show, a particular show that is near and dear to my heart and that made me a die-hard wrestling fan for well over 20 years. June 28th, 2023 is not just a normal, everyday type of day. This day is a very special occasion for me and for old school professional wrestling fans. This day marks the 25th anniversary of the 1998 King of the Ring. And I figured it'd be fitting to come on here and give you a review slash thoughts and grades of this very iconic pay-per-view with one very, very legendary match. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap before I get to the show itself. And I know I'm not the best when it comes to, reviewing stuff here. I don't consider myself a professional or anything, but I'll do my best. I'll do the best I can here for this review slash thoughts and grades. The year, obviously, was 1998. Professional wrestling was white hot. I mean white hot in popularity. Between WWF, WCW, and ECW. Now, WCW, heading into 1998, was still winning the ratings war. They were still kicking the WWF's ass in the ratings. This is the same WCW that was riding off the heels of Starrcade 1997, and yes, while the main event of that show was very controversial with the way it ended, the freaking normal count by the referee when it should have been a fast count, and they fucked the ending up to that, to where they had to do a freaking rematch, and they ended up giving Sting the belt just so he can give it immediately back to Hogan. But nonetheless, 1998 was a white-hot year for WCW. This is the year where we saw the formation of the NWO Wolfpack, where the NWO basically split up into different groups. You had the NWO Wolfpack, you had NWO Black and White, you had the LWO, the Latino World Order. You had all these different factions of the NWO. You had the rise of Bill Goldberg all throughout 1998, culminating in him winning the World Heavyweight title on the episode of Nitro in the Georgia Dome in July, and then, of course, losing the belt at Starrcade 98 in bullshit fashion to Kevin Nash. You had the Eric Bischoff and Ric Flair personal rivalry turned television rivalry turned television feud that happened in the later 1998 year. And just so much other stuff that happened in 1998 for WCW. It wasn't all perfect. There were some bad here and there, especially, that Starrcade 98 match. But 1998 was a white-hot year for WCW. And honestly, it was the very last year where WCW had a bit of an edge over the WWF before WWF just completely overtook them by late 98 heading into early 99. Once 1999 came around, WWF just soared ahead of WCW in the ratings. And WCW, as far as I can remember, I don't think they ever really beat the WWF in 1999 in ratings once WWF completely just overshadowed them. You had ECW, who, while I wouldn't say they were exactly white hot, they were still pretty hot. I still say their best year in company history was perhaps 1997. I mean, 1997, they were white fucking hot in popularity. Like, that to me is the greatest year in ECW's history ever. But they were still pretty damn good in 1998. And then, of course, you had the WWF, who you could see throughout 1997 going into 1998, you could see the attitude changing. You could see the personality starting to change. You could see the WWF is finally starting to adapt a persona that they desperately needed at the time. They were getting their asses kicked by WCW on a weekly basis. And for the longest time, they refused to change their ways. They refused to adapt with the times until it got to a point where they didn't have a choice. And once they adapted with the times, once they went in with the new persona of Attitude, they didn't look back for quite some time, and thus entered the Attitude Era. 1998 WWF remains, to this day, my favorite year of WWF wrestling ever. Second closest would probably be 2000, but on a personal level for me, 1998 was my favorite year. That was the hottest in popularity that I have ever seen WWF at. And yes, I'm referring to it as WWF. I know it's WWE now, but back then it was WWF. You get what? Hopefully you get what I'm saying here. I mean, I know they changed their name in 2002. Blah 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 blah. That's besides the point. Professional wrestling as a whole was white hot in 1998, and I didn't even talk about companies like New Japan Pro Wrestling and NWA and stuff. They were around, and they weren't exactly white hot like WCW, WWF, and ECW, but they were there. They were there as alternatives if you wanted to check them out. But realistically, there were three companies that dominated the professional wrestling scene in 1998, and that was WCW, WWF, and ECW. And by this time, by June 28th, 1998, WWF and WCW were neck and neck in ratings. Like, 1 week WCW will win. Next week WWF will win. Next week WCW wins. Next week WWF wins. It was like a fucking seesaw. Like, 1 week WCW, next week WWF. Like, it was just back and forth throughout the summer of 1998. Like, to me, the peak of the Attitude Era was the summer of 98. Like, the spring, summer, heading into the fall of 1998, when WCW and WWF were neck and neck in the ratings. That was some fun times, man, and I miss those times. I really do. I miss when professional wrestling used to be fun. Like, I haven't had that much fun with professional wrestling in a very, very long time. Like, going back and rewatching the show, yes, it doesn't feel the same like when I saw it live for the first time when I was a child. But still, being able to go back and watch this on Peacock, which I know Peacock did edit a few things with this show from what I heard. But nonetheless, still being able to go back and watch this brought back so many childhood memories, man. I love this show. I loved the WWF in 1998. And at this time, before this pay-per-view, I'll continue with my backstory here. Hold on a second. Let me get something to drink. Got a Mountain Dew here. Yes, I actually went out and picked up a Mountain Dew for this video. Gamer Fuel. At this time in 1998, I was still mostly a WCW fan. I lived up north in a town called Hammond, Indiana from 1994 till 2001. I lived with my dad on the weekday on the weekends. I lived with my dad on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I lived with my mom on the weekdays, which would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and a little bit of Friday, but I would go to my dad's place on the weekend. And I was mostly a WCW fan at that point, but I was slowly starting to become more of a WWF fan at that point. I was a huge fan of Steve Austin. I was the biggest Stone Cold Steve Austin fan probably in the entire town. Like, most of my room was filled with, if the only WWF merchandise I really had was Stone Cold Steve Austin related. I had a few Rock stuff, I had a few DX stuff, but most of my stuff was from the WWF was Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was a humongous Austin fan. And seeing him win the belt at WrestleMania 14 made me so damn happy. I wanted him to win it, and they actually gave him the belt. And man, oh man. There'll never be another one like Stone Cold Steve Austin ever again in professional wrestling. Now, personally, if you ask me who's the biggest star in professional wrestling history, I'm going to have to say Hulk Hogan, because he drew a lot more than Stone Cold Steve Austin did, and he was on top a lot longer than Stone Cold Steve Austin was. Austin really was only on top for like a 3-year, 4-year gap, where Hogan was on top for shit, a decade and a half, pretty much. I mean, if you don't believe me, go look at Hogan's reaction when he faced The Rock at WrestleMania 18. Go look at the reaction Hulk Hogan got in that match. And that was when Rock was white hot in popularity. Hogan was so loved that he got The Rock booed. So if you ask me who the biggest draw in professional wrestling is, the biggest name in professional wrestling, it's Hulk Hogan. And before anybody gets their fucking panties in a knot and gets offended at me saying that and gets butthurt at me saying that, look up the fucking numbers. Hogan drew more than Austin. Hogan sold more than Austin. But anyways, I'm not here to talk about a Hogan versus Austin debate here. And Hogan was in a completely different company. He was over in WCW doing his thing. Austin was doing his thing in the WWF. I was mostly watching WCW every Monday night when it was Nitro versus Raw. I was watching Nitro live, and I had a neighbor. Well, my dad had a neighbor, not me. My dad had a neighbor across the street who was also a big professional wrestling fan. As a matter of fact, he actually was a producer, a camera producer for several wrestling companies way back in the day. He worked as a video producer for the AWA. He worked as a video producer for the NWA. And he was also there for when WCW first started. And yes, unfortunately, he was there when Jim Herd was in charge of everything, and he fucking hated Jim Herd. He called Jim Herd the dumbest motherfucker he ever met in his life. But anyways, he actually worked with the camera in these wrestling companies. He wasn't like one of the main producers or anything, but he helped out. And by then, he was pretty much retired. He hadn't worked in a wrestling company in quite some time, but he still follows professional wrestling. He had a son who was in the cable business. He would set up people's, cable boxes, stuff like that. He worked for a cable television company. And they would pay for the pay-per-views every time a wrestling every time a wrestling pay-per-view would happen, whether it be WCW or WWF. ECW was a little bit harder to get because it didn't really come around our area all that much, and sometimes he would have to go out and like get a tape from somebody that he knew to give to us so we could watch ECW. ECW was a bit harder to get a hold of, but WCW and WWF, those were easy to come by. He would tape a WCW pay-per-view for us, and we can go back and watch it if we didn't see it live. Or he would tape a WWF pay-per-view and let us go back and watch the tape if we didn't see it live. Or hell, even if we did see it live, sometimes we still go back and rewatch the tapes. And that's how I was able to keep up with a majority of professional wrestling back in the day. Is via, I guess you could say tape swapping. But, well, not really tape swapping because we didn't really give him anything well, at least I didn't give him anything in return. I was still a kid. I don't know if my dad paid him for it or not. I don't fucking know. But anyways, he would give us tapes of shows that he would record on a VHS tape for us to watch. And at the time, he recorded Monday Night Raw for us because we weren't watching Raw live. We were watching Nitro live. But this show right here, King of the Ring 1998, and that one specific match changed everything around. The very next night after this pay-per-view, we watched Raw live, start to finish. And we flipped to Nitro every now and again, but we watched Monday Night Raw basically start to finish. And we taped Nitro. For the very first time, we taped Nitro. We had never had our neighbor tape WCW Nitro for us before. It was always Monday Night Raw because we always got to see Nitro live. We always watched Nitro live. But after this pay-per-view, everything shifted. We went from watching Nitro live to watching Raw live and taping Nitro. He would still tape Raw. His son would tape Raw in another room. But, man, oh man, I miss those days, dude. I really do. I mean, nowadays you got Peacock. I mean, you had the WWE Network before Peacock. I mean, I could literally go on Peacock right now and just watch any classic pay-per-view, any classic Raw or Nitro or SmackDown or Thunder from the Attitude Era. The same one that I watched on a VHS tape, I can watch on Peacock. Although it is a little edited, they did censor a few things here and there, and there are things that are only on the VHS tapes, like commercials and stuff that are obviously not in this on the Peacock network. But anyway, that's besides the point. So, what do you say we get to the actual review, shall we? Hold up a sec, I'll be right back. It was 25 years ago today, June 28th, 1998, when King of the Ring 1998 took place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in front of a sold-out crowd of 17,000 plus at the Pittsburgh Penguins Arena. The first match on the show featured Taka Michinoku, the light heavyweight champion at the time, and the Headbangers versus Kai and Tai. And before I get to my thoughts of the match, I gotta say, I loved the light heavyweight championship. That's a belt that I wish would come back to the WWE, but unfortunately it's never going to. I mean, they pretty much replaced that belt with, is the Cruiserweight Championship even still around? I know they brought the Cruiserweight title back a few years ago, but is it even still around anymore at this point? The last time I watched modern day wrestling was really 2019. I did see Raw 30. I watched the 30th anniversary of Raw, and honestly, that was the last thing modern day professional wrestling that I saw. I haven't kept up with modern day wrestling full time since 2019, so I don't know if the cruiserweight title is still around or not. But I love the light heavyweight championship, and the cruiserweight title at this point was over in WCW via the cruiserweight division. You know, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, the man of 1,000 holds versus the man of 1,001 holds, and Jericho had that fucking list. That was so long that it rolled out to the outside of the ring. Anyways, I'm here to talk about that right now. Here to talk about the first match on King of the Ring 1998. Taka Michinoku and the Headbangers versus Kai and Tai. Decent opener. Nothing really too amazing or spectacular. It was a decent opening match. Taka Michinoku and the Headbangers ended up winning against Kai and Tai. And I'm sorry, but every time I think of Kai and Tai, I always think of Fudaki's Indeed. And then, of course, I always think back to that legendary Val Venis segment, and you know which segment I'm talking about. I'm WWPP! Oh man, when Val Venis was fucking with one of the girls, I don't remember who it was, but he was fucking with one of the girls in Kai and Tai, and they fucking kidnapped Val Venis and they took him in the locker room, and they acted like they were gonna chop his dick, and he's just screaming, ah! Ah! That's like the only thing that I remember about Kai and Tai is that it helped further evaluate elevate, the career of Funaki with the Indeed gimmick, and it gave us the legendary Val Venis segment. So credit where credit's due to Kai and Tai on that. Overall, decent match. Taka Michinoku and the Headbangers win. I guess I'll give it like Bret Hart 4 out of 10. It was, I mean, nothing really spectacular though. Just So after that, we go from to oh my god. Out comes Sable. And man, oh man. Sable was fucking hot. Like, when I saw this show as a kid, obviously I didn't really think too much of Sable. I thought she was cool, but I didn't find her attractive or hot or anything when I was a kid. Obviously, I didn't think that because I was a kid. You know, I didn't think Sable was hot or attractive or anything. I just thought she was a cool person. And she looked cool. But I didn't find her, like, you know, sexy or attractive, because obviously I was a kid. But going back and watching this pay-per-view again, good God! Oh, man. Sable was white hot. Literally and figuratively. She was white hot in popularity, and she was white hot in looks. Man, oh man, oh man. Like, that's a woman who, if this pay-per-view were to have happened today, instead of 25 years ago, if this were to have happened today, if I was reviewing this pay-per-view as if it just went off the air, I'd be wanting to go out and buy her merch. Good God. You want to talk about, like, top 5 hottest women in professional wrestling history? Sable's easily in that top 5. She might even be number 1. She might be number 1. I mean, she was smoking hot in 1998. Unfortunately, somebody in WWF thought it was a good idea to give her a microphone. Sable may have the looks, but she damn sure cannot talk. Luckily, the only thing that she did here was introduce Vince McMahon, which thank God, because if I had to sit down and sit through a freaking Sable promo, I probably would have been like, it's really fucking bad. Brock Lesnar, you lucky son of a bitch. Sable remains the only woman in professional wrestling history, by the way, to be on Playboy not once but twice. I figured I'd throw that fact out there. I'm pretty sure a majority of people know it by now, though. She's the only woman in the history of pro wrestling to be on it not once but twice. And the first time she was on it, it remains to this day, 25 years later, the biggest selling Playboy magazine in the history of Playboy. And Sable was on the front cover, front and center. Man, oh man. But anyways, Vince ends up coming out with the Stooges, Pat Patterson and Gerald Briscoe. Cuts a promo about, Austin and Kane, the main event later on in the night, which I'll get to that in a little bit. And basically calls everybody in the crowd disappointments, saying that they're disappointments to their mom and dad, that they probably think their mom and dad thinks that they're disappointments, blah, 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 blah. And the only really entertaining part about this whole promo segment was when Sable was leaving the ring. Pat Patterson goes up and smacks her on the ass, and then Sable turns around and slaps the shit out of Pat Patterson. That was funny as hell. Honestly, it was really the only entertaining thing about this entire segment. Not one of Vince McMahon's best promos, not one of his best segments, but at least we got to see Vince McMahon here, so what the hell. And we got to see Sable. So, it's a W for me. If I had to give this a grade, I don't know. I guess a 3. I guess I'll give it a 3 out of 10. 1, it involved, Vince McMahon. It involved Vince. Number 2, it involves Sable, and she was hot as hell. And number 3, Sable slapping the shit out of Pat Patterson always makes me chuckle. So, there you go. 3 out of 10. Next up, we got Ken Shamrock versus the Memphis mid-card piece of crap, Jeff Jarrett, in a King of the Ring semifinal. I'm not going to speak much about this match because it involves Jeff Jarrett. Ken Shamrock wins. He advances to the finals. Need I say any more? Any match that has Jeff Jarrett in it, I'm going to not really talk about because I don't give a fuck about Jeff Jarrett. This son of a bitch is still wrestling to this day. This pay-per-view, keep in mind, this pay-per-view happened 25 years ago. This son of a bitch is still wrestling to this day. Not full-time, but part-time. What the fuck? Haven't you done, enough damage to the professional wrestling business? See TNA, for example? Please, do us all a favor and go the fuck away. Please. Ken Shamrock wins, and that's all I'm going to say about this match. This match is going to get a fucking 1 out of 10 from me. And the only reason it's getting a 1 is because Ken Shamrock ended up winning the match. If Jeff Jarrett won, this would be a fucking 0 out of 10. Moving on. Enough about that Memphis mid-card piece of crap. Next up, we get the next King of the Ring semifinal match. The Rock versus Dan Severn. Now, I don't have a problem with The Rock winning this match, and I don't have a problem with the way he won it via, interference from the Nation of Domination. And I love the match that happens later on the night, the King of the Ring final match between Shamrock and The Rock. But I do kind of wish we could have got Ken Shamrock versus Dan Severn in the King of the Ring finals. Like, if you were going to have Shamrock win, it would have been cool to see him versus Dan Severn. You know, former UFC fighter versus former UFC fighter. It would have been really, really damn cool to see that as the King of the Ring finals. And just let those two just beat the ever-loving shit out of each other. That would have been really entertaining to sit down and watch. But, again, I understand why they went with The Rock. You want to build The Rock up. And The Rock in 1998, you could see at this point, I mean, he's still getting booed at this point of time, but the boos were starting to die down more and more, and you start to hear the cheers start to come up. And as a matter of fact, Rock was starting to get so over at this point that by SummerSlam, which was about a month and a half later, when he had that ladder match against Triple H for the Intercontinental title, he actually was getting cheered more than even Triple H was. And he was supposed to be the heel going into that match. And he was getting more cheers than even Triple H. And Triple H ended up winning that match, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Triple H won the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam in the ladder match against The Rock. And even him winning wasn't enough to overshadow the fact that Rock out-cheered him. He got out-cheered by The Rock, who was supposed to be a heel. So you could see where The Rock at this point was starting to go in terms of popularity, until, of course, they turned him heel at Survivor Series that year. But at this point in the time, you could see where The Rock's going. You could tell that they had really big plans for The Rock. Really big plans. But nonetheless, The Rock ends up winning this match against Dan Severn. Not The Rock's greatest match. Not Dan Severn's greatest match, but a pretty damn good match nonetheless. Rock wins via help via the Nation of Domination. I guess I'll give this a 4 out of 10 like I did the opening match. It was okay. Not either one of the men's best match in their entire career, but an okay match nonetheless. Next up, oh boy. Too Cool versus Al Snow and Head. What does everybody want? Head! What does everybody need? Head! Leave it to Al Snow to somehow, someway, get a gimmick over where he talks to a mannequin head. He got this gimmick over. In today's modern day WWE, something like this would get booed all over the place. People would be shitting all over it, saying this is fucking stupid, it's ridiculous, it's idiotic, it looks kiddie-ish. But in 1998, he somehow, someway got this over. And Head became one of the biggest selling pieces of merchandise in the year of 1998. Now, at the time that this match happened, Al Snow had just come back to the WWF. He was trying to get a contract with the WWF. He was trying to get a meeting with Vince McMahon. And no matter what he did, he could not get that meeting with Vince McMahon. I remember the segments, and they even, showed them here, where he would show up to Raw and try to sneak into Raw, and the security would always kick him out, and he would just find different ways to keep coming back into the arena. One week, him and Head dressed up as Mexican commentators. The next night, they're Japanese commentators. Just really fun time. And it got to the point where he had to rely on somebody for help. So who does he turn to? He turns to Jerry the King Lawler. And Jerry the King Lawler ends up trying to help him out. But Al Snow does a bad thing. He takes the King's crown. You never take Jerry the King Lawler's crown. And this starts a little bit of a feud between Jerry the King Lawler and Al Snow, which culminates in this match with Too Cool, which was Brian Christopher and Oh God, what was the other dude's name? Brian Christopher and oh God, I forgot the other dude's name. And I just watched this show about a few hours ago, and I forgot the dude's fucking name. I know one of the guys is Brian Christopher. I can't remember the other dude. Anyways, they had a tag team match. They announced a special guest referee for the match. Of course, special guest referee being Jerry the King Lawler. And he guest referees the match. And the whole match was basically a 2-on-1 handicap match. Like, you didn't really see Head get in the match until the very end. And I gotta say, this was a pretty decent match. I mean, it's not the best match on the show, obviously. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I thought this was a fun match. Although although JR on commentary just had that attitude of I just don't give a fuck. If you go back and watch this match, listen to JR. Listen to good old Jim Ross on commentary calling this match solo. You can clearly tell JR does not give a flying fuck about commentating this match. Even JR, as professional as he is, even he went into this match saying, yeah, I don't give a fuck. This is stupid. But nonetheless, it was a fun match. And it looked like at the end that Al Snow got the victory. But he tagged Head in, and Head was the legal man. So I believe it was Brian Christopher does the pinfall on Head. And while he's doing the pinfall, he takes a bottle of Head and Shoulders shampoo, shoves it into Head, into the bottom part of the mannequin head, and Jerry Lawler goes for the pinfall, 1, 2, 3, and Too Cool ends up winning the match, and Al Snow and Head do not get to have their meeting with Vince McMahon. This was a fun match. It wasn't, the greatest match in the world, but in terms of, comic relief, in terms of, something, to just sit back and laugh your ass off at, this was the type of match for you. I mean, unless, you didn't find it funny at all, then, well, my apologies to you then on that matter. I guess Jim Ross obviously didn't find this very funny. I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 10. I mean, there's really nothing amazing that happened in this match. I mean, credit where credit's due to Al Snow for basically being in a 2-on-1 handicap match and pretty much working the entire match by himself with a little help with Head at the very end. Credit where credit's due to Al Snow. I mean, the fact that he did this match as a handicap match, basically, and the fact that he got a fucking mannequin head over in 1998. If they even, like I said, if they even try to do this gimmick in 2023, it'd be shit on all over the place. But nonetheless, 3.5 out of 10. Too Cool wins via pinfall and with the use of Head and Shoulders, which is kind of funny because I actually use Head and Shoulders shampoo. I actually ran out of it just a few days ago. I use Head and Shoulders for my hair. I also use Old Spice and Axe shampoo. But most of the time I get Head and Shoulders shampoo. So it was kind of funny seeing them use that shampoo here. When I saw it, I was like, hey, that's a shampoo that I use. But nonetheless, that's pretty much all I have to say about this match. Nothing really amazing, just a fun match. Next match on the card is a little bit of a physical one. We have X-Pac versus Owen Hart. No titles on the line, no special stipulation, just a good old physical one-on-one bout. And I gotta say, this was a pretty decent match. It's actually one of the better matches on this show in terms of physicality, and most of the physicality came from Owen Hart. I mean, Owen was just slinging X-Pac all over the place in this match. I mean, good grief. And there was a line that was said in this match that kind of made me go, ugh, when I heard it. And it was when JR was talking about the fact that Owen Hart had never missed a match in his wrestling career via serious injury. Yeah, kind of eerie when you go back and watch this show and hear that line, considering we all know what ends up happening literally almost a year later. Ugh. Yeah, I mean, kind of made me a little uncomfortable hearing JR say that. And also, rest in peace, Owen Hart, by the way. I figured I'd get that out there as well. Good match. A lot of physicality from Owen Hart to X-Pac in this match. X-Pac ends up winning with help from Chyna when Chyna got in the ring and DDT'd Owen Hart after Mark Henry came out and interfered in the match by attacking X-Pac, and then Vader came out to attack Mark Henry because they had a little bit of a feud going on at the time. So X-Pac wins the match via help from Chyna. It was a good match. Like I said, a lot of physicality from Owen Hart. I'll actually give this a 5 out of 10. I'll give this in the middle. It was a pretty good match, and I like what Owen Hart did in this match. Pretty good match. Not the best match on the card, but good nonetheless. So up next, we got a Paul Bearer promo. Paul Bearer comes out and basically cuts a promo on The Undertaker, talking about how The Undertaker broke into his house the previous week on Raw, which is a legendary segment. You think I forgot where you live? And then he drops the freaking China dress on top of Paul Bearer's ankle, and Paul Bearer's just screaming at the top of his lungs. Legendary segment. Go check it out if you haven't. But he pretty much talks mostly about the main event between Kane and Stone Cold Steve Austin. How Kane has never been able to go outside because, you know, the fire, the whole, you know, gimmick surrounding him, you know, where he was set on fire, blah, 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 blah. Talking about how Kane is going to walk out of the arena tonight as your new WWF champion. Nothing really amazing or spectacular about this promo. And also, rest in peace, Paul Bearer. There's a lot of people on the show, by the way. I wanted to bring this up. There's a lot of people on the show who are unfortunately are not with us anymore. And that kind of makes me a little sad thinking about it, going back watching the show. You know, people like Owen Hart and Paul Bearer and Brian Christopher and, you know, Pat Patterson, and I think Gerald Briscoe still alive? I hope Gerald Briscoe is still alive. I don't know if he is or isn't. If he's dead, then rest in peace. If he's alive, then I wish him well in whatever he's doing right now. But there's a lot of people from this show that unfortunately are no longer with us, and that kind of casts a little bit of a shadow over the show, unfortunately. Nonetheless, this promo really wasn't anything to write home about. Fuck. I hate to do this to Paul Bearer, because I love and respect the hell out of Paul Bearer, but I'm going to have to give this like I don't know, a 1.5 out of 10. I mean, it's not the worst promo in wrestling history, but it damn sure wasn't the best. It damn sure wasn't the best promo I've ever heard from Paul Bearer. It was just very, let's face it, it was bad. Like, I guess they just sent him out there to just fill up time. That's really all I have to say about that. Next match, the New Age Outlaws versus the New Midnight Express. for the WWF Tag Team titles, the New Age Outlaws were the WWF Tag Team Champions, and the New Midnight Express were the NWA Tag Team Champions. So, WWF Tag Champs versus NWA Tag Champs with the WWF Tag Team titles on the line. This was a pretty decent tag team match. It wasn't the greatest New Age Outlaws match I've ever seen, but it might have been the best New Midnight Express match I've ever seen, because this was a pretty good match between the two. The New Age Outlaws end up winning. They retain their belts. I guess I'll give this a... I guess I'll give it a 4.5 out of 10. I know, like I said at the very beginning, you know, I'm not a professional when it comes to reviewing stuff, but I'm trying, damn it, so please bear with me. 4.5 out of 10, New Age Outlaws retain. Not much I could really say about that match. So, next, Triple H comes out to join commentary for the King of the Ring finale. And it's kind of fitting that they had Triple H here on commentary. He had just lost the first round match to The Rock on an episode of Raw a few weeks prior. He was last year's 1997 King of the Ring winner, so he knows a thing or two about the King of the Ring tournament here. And him and Rock have a little bit of a feud going on at this time, which led into the Intercontinental title match at SummerSlam 1998. So out come The Rock and Ken Shamrock, and we get the King of the Ring final match between these two. And I just gotta say real quick, obviously The Rock's greatest feud in professional wrestling history was him and Austin. But him and Ken Shamrock is perhaps my second or third, no, actually it's my third favorite. My second favorite Rock feud would be him and Mick Foley, and then of course him and Austin being number one. But him and Ken Shamrock has some really damn good matches against each other. Ken Shamrock really did a fantastic job elevating The Rock's career at the very start. These two had very damn good matches against each other and a really damn good feud. And to me, this match right here is the pinnacle of their feud. This was, in my opinion, the best match that these two ever had against each other, period. What a fucking match. This was the second best match of the entire night. If you want a damn good professional wrestling match to go back and watch this match. Trust me, I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy the hell out of this match. And I thought they were going to go with The Rock here. I really did. I thought they were going to go with The Rock and give him that King of the Ring rub and make him the 1998 King of the Ring, because they were really starting to shove a rocket ship up the Rock's ass at this point. But surprisingly, they actually went with Ken Shamrock here. And it always puzzles me. They go with Ken Shamrock here and have him win the 1998 King of the Ring tournament, but he never went after the WWF title. You do all of this building up of Ken Shamrock to have him win the King of the Ring, and you don't do anything with that. You just say, oh, he won King of the Ring. Yay! And then you never followed up with it. I mean, granted, literally a month and a half later, we get Owen Hart versus Ken Shamrock in the legendary match of SummerSlam 1998. I love that fucking match. But I always felt like Ken Shamrock got robbed of a WWF title opportunity. I don't think he should have won the belt because of who you had at the time, holding the belt. But I think that him and Austin should have at least had a one-off match for the WWF Championship. Why the hell not? Would it really fucking hurt? Would it have really hurt to have Ken Shamrock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin one time? That would have been a match going in that you would have looked at it and been like, oh my god, Ken Shamrock might seem like the type of son of a bitch that actually really could beat Stone Cold Steve Austin for the belt here. Like, you could believe it. Here's this former UFC fighter going up against Stone Cold Steve Austin, the toughest SOB on the planet. If there's anybody that you could believe that actually could beat the living shit out of Austin, it would be Ken Shamrock. And they never fucking did that. And I never understood that. I never did. And I know that people said, oh, well, Ken Shamrock couldn't talk on the microphone. He didn't need to fucking talk. What he did in the ring did the talking for everybody. He was a badass. He was sadistic. He was psychotic in the ring. He was a fucking madman. He had anger issues. He didn't need to cut a promo or talk on the mic. His talking in the ring did the talking for him. By talking, I mean what he did in the wrestling match. What he did to people. That did the talking for him. He didn't need a manager. He didn't need a mouthpiece. He could do the talking for himself by what he did in the ring to his opponent. And it always baffled me that they had him win King of the Ring 1998 here, and they never followed up with it. Like I said, I love the match that he had with Owen. But I wish they really would have followed up with this. And they just never did. And that always baffled me even to this day. Now I know what you're all here for. I know you're here to hear my thoughts of the one match that everybody remembers the show for. The one match that everybody still talks about to this very day. But before I get to that match, I figured I'd talk about the main event first, before I talk about the match that everyone wants to hear. Main event of the show was Stone Cold Steve Austin, the WWF Champion, taking on Kane in a First Blood match. As a kid, I thought this match was fucking stupid. As a teenager going back watching it, again, I thought this match was stupid. Going back and watching this show as a grown adult, I still think this match is fucking stupid. Here you have Stone Cold Steve Austin, who you had just given the title a few months prior at WrestleMania 14, who was having this ongoing feud with Vince McMahon, which would turn into the biggest feud in professional wrestling history. And you're having him go one-on-one against Kane. And instead of having this be a generic one-on-one match, or with a stipulation like, I don't know, a last man standing, an I Quit match, a Falls Count Anywhere, or hell, fuck it, another Hell in a Cell match. You make this a First Blood match. I'm sorry, I always thought that was fucking stupid. How in the hell am I supposed to take a First Blood match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kane, of all people, seriously, when you know damn good and well that they're not going to unmask Kane unless it's a very, very, very special occasion, and Kane's wearing a full body fucking suit. And sure enough, Kane comes out, he's got his arms all wrapped up, he's got the Kane suit on, he's got the mask on, he's got, stuff all over his legs to protect himself from getting, busted open from bleeding. And when I saw Kane come out for this match, I knew immediately right then and there, yep, he's gonna fucking win. There's no way they're gonna have Kane lose this match. They're not gonna bust Kane open. Because the stipulation is whoever draws blood first loses the match. This whole concept for this match was fucking stupid. Like, the storyline I thought itself was really fucking stupid. I mean, sure, we had that legendary moment of Kane dumping the bucket of blood on Austin in the middle of the ring, and everybody thinks that's what inspired the Bloody Austin t-shirt. No! The Bloody Austin t-shirt was inspired by Austin versus Brett at WrestleMania 13. It was not inspired by Kane dumping the blood on Stone Cold Steve Austin in the middle of the ring. That's not where that shirt came from. It came from Austin and Brett. I always thought this storyline, though, was so fucking stupid. And going into it, with Kane saying that if he didn't win the match, he would set himself on fire, which was really fucking stupid. Like, you really expect me to sit here and believe that they're going to allow Kane to set himself on fire on pay-per-view or national television the next night on Raw? Give me a fucking break. I mean, I know that they did it, you know, with Kane shooting a lightning bolt at one of the camera people and setting him on fire, but I mean, how do I explain this? I'm almost at the hour mark of this review, by the way, so I'm going to have to make another fucking project just to continue talking about this show. Oh my god, actually, it's almost 4 in the morning. I might as well just get off and call it a night here. But before I do, I thought the storyline was stupid. I didn't really believe Kane was actually going to set himself on fire. Even Stone Cold Steve Austin said in his podcast that the dumbest wrestling storyline he ever worked in, the one storyline where he actually went up to Vince and said, yeah, this is fucking stupid, was this storyline. When Stone Cold Steve Austin, of all people, is telling you that this storyline sucked, this storyline fucking sucked. The match sucked, the concept sucked, the stipulation sucked, the storyline sucked. Austin ended up bleeding on his back at the very beginning of the match, and the whole time the commentators, JR and Jerry the King Lawler, are trying to tell you, no, that doesn't count. You have to bleed from the face. Even though the stipulation of a first blood match is the person who draws blood first loses the match. Austin was drawing blood on his back at the very beginning. The ref should have called it right then and there, but whatever, I guess. The cell coming down in the middle of the match for no fucking reason. They never explained that. They never said, oh, it was Vince and the Stooges that lowered the cell. Oh, Paul Bearer lowered the cell. They never explained it. Just, oh, the cell comes down. Taker and Mankind get involved in the main event, which I guess that was cool, especially seeing Mankind come out after everything that he'd been through and interfering in the match. And despite all of this, Austin ends up bleeding. He gets his face busted open. Kane wins the WWF Championship. Just so the very next night on Raw, they could do a fucking rematch and Austin wins the belt right back. What was the point of giving Kane the belt if he was just going to drop it the very next night on Raw? What was the point of this match? What was the point of the stipulation? What was the point of the storyline? Nothing about this made any fucking sense. Especially because you're just going to give the belt right back to Austin so he can go into SummerSlam 1998 and have a feud with The Undertaker. Just everything about this is so fucking stupid. I'm sorry, I don't like this main event. I didn't like it as a kid. I didn't like it as a teenager going back and watching it. And I damn sure don't like it as an adult going back and watching it. It was fucking stupid. It was fucking dumb. I hate this match. I hate this first blood stipulation. I hate that they gave Kane the belt just so he could drop it the very next night to Austin. Why couldn't this have been just a generic one-on-one match? Or better yet, you could have just made it the fucking Hell in a Cell match. You brought the cell down any damn ways. You could have just made this another Hell in a Cell match. Anyways, that's enough about the main event. This gets a fucking... This gets like a 2 out of 10 from me. It's not the worst match I've ever seen, but this match, going back and watching it, pisses me off. And it still pisses me off to this day. What a stupid main event. Just to give him the belt back just to give Austin the belt back the very next night on Raw. Unreal. Alright, I'm back, everyone. I'm recording this part around 1 o'clock in the afternoon because where I last left off, it was almost 4 in the morning and I needed to get to sleep. I wish I would have finished the video last night, but it is what it is. I'm recording this, like I said, in the afternoon, so if I get bothered by my family, I get bothered by my family. There's not a damn thing I can do about that. But anyways, what do you say we talk about the one match that everybody remembers this show for? The one match that everybody talks about when it pertains to this show. The one match that everyone's going to remember forever and ever and ever, even after Undertaker and Mankind, Mick Foley are long gone and no longer on this planet. People are still going to be talking about this match. Non-professional wrestling fans know what the hell this match is. People that don't even watch wrestling, people that have considered wrestling to be fake, have seen this match. And even they say that this is the most brutal and vicious match that they have ever seen in their entire life. Even they had to admit that there ain't nothing fake about this match. What Mick Foley put himself through in this match will live on forever. And of course, I am talking about The Undertaker versus Mankind, Hell in a Cell. Now, these two were not strangers to each other. They had wrestled many times before, going all the way back to 1996. They had a feud throughout all of 1996. They had a match at SummerSlam 1996 that year where Paul Bearer turned heel by attacking The Undertaker with the urn and siding with Mankind, which I thought the ending to that match was fucking stupid. The match itself was great. I just thought the ending was really stupid. And then Paul Bearer aligning himself with Mankind of all people, I thought was fucking stupid. But nonetheless, the two have had a storied rivalry against each other for the past 2 years at that point. However, they had wrestled so many times at this point that when this match was announced for the card, everybody just basically rolled their eyes. Even the most diehard Undertaker and Mick Foley fans were looking at this like, ugh, another match between these two again? How many times are these two going to wrestle? Like, even the most diehard fans were looking at this and just rolling their eyes. Even they were sick of it. Because they had seen these two wrestle literally like 1,000 times before. And now they gotta see it yet again. But with the extra stipulation being that this is a Hell in a Cell match. I thought the build to this match was kind of weak. I mean, you did get the one legendary segment where Taker assaulted Paul Bearer in the comfort of his home. But that didn't even have anything to do with the Hell in a Cell match itself. That was just him going to Paul Bearer's house and attacking Paul Bearer. Like, I thought the build-up for this match was kind of, it was kind of bad. But the match itself, there ain't nothing bad about this. This was epic. This was awesome. And this is going to be remembered for the rest of time. So the match starts off with Mankind coming down to the ringside with a steel chair. And I always thought it was weird when I saw this live for the very first time. When I saw him come out with the chair, I was like, oh, well, you know, it's a Hell in a Cell match. I'm assuming, you know, weapons can be allowed inside the cell. He's just bringing him something to help himself out with against The Undertaker. And he goes inside the cell, and he leaves the cell, and he goes back to the outside, and then he takes the exact same chair that he's holding in his hand and throws it up onto the cell roof. And then he starts climbing the side of the cell. And everybody's just sitting there thinking to themselves, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, why is he climbing on top of the cell? And he gets all the way up to the top, and he starts walking around on top of the Hell in a Cell. And Mick Foley stated in his not documentary, well, I guess you could say somewhat of a documentary, his biography, Have a Nice Day, which I actually have that book, by the way. And he did an entire chapter talking about this match between him and Undertaker. The build up to it, the match itself, the original ideas that he had for the match. It's a really interesting read. Although he didn't talk about, he didn't talk about the original plan before he got chokeslammed through the. Well, I'll get to that in a little bit. I asked him about that personally when I got to meet him one time. But anyways, he goes up to the top of the cell, and he said that while he was walking up on the top of the cell, that was the scariest experience of his entire life. Keep in mind, we're talking about a man that has been in matches where the ring has literally exploded on itself. This man has been in Japanese death matches with the likes of Terry Funk and so many others. This man had been in barbed wire matches. This man had his arm nearly blown off by C4 explosives. This man had been in exploding rings. This man had been through it all. And he said that being on top of that cell in 1998 was the most terrifying experience of his entire life. Because he said while he was walking on top of the cell roof, he could feel the roof starting to give way. Because it wasn't built strong enough to withstand that amount of weight. And he said that he felt like he was going to fall through the cell roof, just walking on top of it. Anyways, Undertaker ends up coming out. Undertaker looks up at Mick Foley on top of the cell, and I love how Mick Foley stated in his book that there was a split second where he thought Mark Calloway, which is the Undertaker's real name, he thought Mark Calloway wasn't going to agree to climb up the cell, which he said that he would look like the biggest idiot in the world having to climb back down if Mark looked up at him and shook his head like, I ain't fucking climbing up there, are you kidding me? And then Mick Foley would have to climb down on the side and get in the ring and have like a one-on-one match inside the ring, which would have completely destroyed the ideas that they had for the match. But luckily Undertaker agreed to climb up, and keep in mind, Undertaker had a broken foot at this time. He had fucked up his foot. I don't remember exactly how, but he had a broken foot at the time of this match, so he wasn't in 100% health. Mick Foley also wasn't in 100% health. And Undertaker climbed up the cell a lot faster than even Mick Foley did. And they start the match on top of the Hell in a Cell. And you get the one moment where Mick Foley picks up the steel chair, hits Undertaker in the back with it. They're walking on top of the cell, and they get to a certain area of the cell roof where the cell roof actually buckles and gives way. And both Undertaker and Mick Foley have stated in interviews that they are so lucky that the rest of the cell roof didn't give way when that happened. Because had it given way, they would have fell, the area that they were in, they would have fell directly on top of the turnbuckle post, and oh god, I don't even know if they would even be here right now at this point. It's an absolute miracle that that cell roof did not give way there. Little bit of a foreshadowing for what happens later on in the match. But anyways, I continue. They get to the side of the cell, and it looks like Mick Foley's going to go for a DDT to Undertaker on top of the steel chair. Undertaker fights him off. They walk over to the side. And then, in a moment that has been captured forever, in a moment that will stand the test of time, in a moment that you might arguably could say, next to Hogan body slamming Andre, this might be the greatest professional wrestling moment of all time. Undertaker grabs Mankind, he grabs Mick Foley, and throws him off the side of the Hell in a Cell roof into the Spanish announce table down below. The moment, the call on commentary by JR will live on forever. I wish I could play the audio of it here, but I would obviously get copyright strike by freaking WWE. Like, I've seen people try to use the audio of this match before in videos, and they get freaking copyright claimed or copyright strike. I'd rather not go through that right now. But if you've seen the moment, you know exactly what JR said. And if you don't, fuck it, I'll say it. Good God Almighty, they killed him. For the love of God, he may be broken in half. And JR admitted that when that moment happened, every word that came out of his mouth was completely unscripted. He wasn't supposed to say that on air. He was taken by surprise so hard that he literally broke kayfabe and actually started calling the match like he just witnessed somebody die. Even Jerry the King Lawler, who was playing the heel commentator, and by the way, I love heel Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. I wish we had heel commentators like that again, but obviously we can't because everything's gotta be PG nowadays. Can't have commentators that say offensive stuff on commentary. See what happened to Jim Cornette in that one wrestling promotion where they fired him over the most stupid fucking thing. But anyways, even Jerry the King Lawler, who was playing a heel commentator, even he started to break kayfabe and started to worry for Mick Foley in this match. This match scared the daylights of those two so much that they actually started calling the match like they were witnessing a man die in the middle of the ring. And there were a few times where obviously they got back into, kayfabe, but what was going on in the match was freaking them out so much that they were switching between kayfabe and non-kayfabe. And I believe that this is some of the best commentary work that those two have ever done in their entire professional wrestling commentating careers. If you want to see JR and Jerry the King Lawler at their very, very, very best on commentary, go watch this match. Anyways, after Undertaker threw Mick Foley off the side of the cell, the EMTs come out. Vince McMahon, of all people, ends up coming out. And this was completely unplanned. Vince was not supposed to come out. He came out completely breaking kayfabe because he actually thought that Mick Foley possibly just killed himself getting thrown off the side of the cell. Because when Mick Foley landed, he almost missed the Spanish announce table. Mick Foley stated in Have a Nice Day that had Undertaker threw him just a few inches further, that he would have hit his head on the guardrail and he probably would not be here right now. Half of his body hit the announce table. The other half of his body hit the concrete floor. The impact was so severe that he shattered his arm the second he hit. So the rest of this match, he wrestled with his arm basically dangling around. And he said that he couldn't feel no pain in his arm. He felt no pain in his arm. All the pain, like the pain was so severe that there was no pain at all in his arm. He couldn't feel a fucking thing in his arm. And they raise the cell. Undertaker's still on top. They raise the cell. They get Mick Foley out of there on a stretcher. And while they're in the walkway, the entranceway, and the cell comes back down and Taker's climbing back down because he even thinks the match is over. Here comes Mankind back up on his feet with a smile on his face. And there he goes climbing the top of the cell yet again with a broken fucking arm. And he's still able to manage to climb up to the top of the cell. And it was that moment right there that made people think to myself, oh my god, this man might be fucking indestructible. So they climb back up, and speaking of indestructible, they climb back up to the top of the cell. Undertaker gives a few chops to Mankind, to Mick Foley. And then, in another iconic moment in this match, and one that was completely not planned. This was not supposed to happen at all. Undertaker goes to chokeslam Mankind, gets a little bit of elevation, but not enough, and Mankind falls through the cell roof onto the hard concrete mat, basically a concrete mat, in the middle of the ring. Everybody involved with the spot said that that was not supposed to happen. Taker said it wasn't supposed to happen. Mankind, Mick Foley himself stated it wasn't supposed to happen. Everybody involved with this match said it was not supposed to happen. That roof was not supposed to give way. But because the ceiling had been constructed so poorly that when Mick Foley came down, he came down with enough force to snap the cell roof, which caused him to fall to the ring below. Mick stated in Have a Nice Day that had Undertaker got a little bit more elevation on the chokeslam, he would have landed directly on his neck. And Mick would have died right then and there in the middle of that ring. He would have landed directly on his head. The angle that he came down at, he would have landed right on his head, snapping his neck, and Mick Foley would have died right then and there in the middle of the ring. And just hearing that come out of Mick Foley's mouth, just imagining that, is absolutely terrifying. We could have lost Mick Foley this night. We could have seen Mick Foley die in the middle of the ring, doing what he loves most, and that's putting on one hell of a show for the fans. I actually got to meet Mick Foley quite some time ago. This was like well over a decade ago. And I asked him about this particular match. And I asked him, do you remember what the original plan was had you not gone through the cell roof? Like, what was the original plan had the cell roof not have broken? This crazy son of a bitch told me that the original plan was for him to get thrown off the side of the cell through the English announce table where Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross were. He wanted to get thrown off again through the other announce table. And unfortunately, that did not happen. And thinking about it now, I think it's a good thing that that did not happen. Because if he would have took another fall from that height through the other announce table, God only knows what would have happened. Mick probably would not be here right now. I mean, he's lucky to even be alive after the choke slam through the cell roof. Undertaker, he was asked about his thoughts on it, and he said that when he chokeslammed Mick Foley through the cell roof and Mick hit the concrete mat, he said while he was standing up there and looked down at Mick and saw Mick wasn't moving, he said for a split second he thought he just killed a man. Like Mark Calloway said, I thought you were dead. He actually said that to Mick Foley's face. I thought you died in the middle of the ring. I thought I had just killed a man. And luckily the cameras didn't get a close-up shot of Taker's face, because Taker himself said that he was mortified by what happened. It wasn't supposed to happen. He thought he just killed Mick Foley. So of course he's going to be freaked out. So the EMTs come back in. Terry Funk is with the EMTs, and he even broke kayfabe to check on Mick Foley. The EMTs are in the ring. Undertaker climbs down the cell roof on the side. He gets in the ring. Terry Funk goes to berate him. He attacks Terry Funk, chokeslams Terry Funk. Mick Foley gets back up to his feet. The EMTs leave the ring. They leave the cell. They lock the cell door. And I guess you could say the match had officially started at that point, even though it had really started many minutes before. So the match is now taking place inside the ring. Mick Foley is so fucked up that the guy can barely even stand up. Like, he goes to take a punch when he stands up at Taker, and because he's so fucked up internally, he falls back down. And while I will say that the rest of the match before the ending wasn't as iconic as what they did on top of the cell roof, it was still frightening to see Mick Foley, working in this type of condition. Like, you knew he was fucked up. You knew he was completely fucked up. He had internal bleeding from the inside, from the falls. Blood was coming out of his mouth. He actually had jammed a tooth up into his nose. One of his teeth, the fall through the cell roof, was so impactful that a chair, the chair that he had, came down with him and hit him right square in the mouth. And the impact was so violent that one of his front teeth dislodged, went through his inner lobe of his mouth, went through his gums, all the way up into his nose. He was bleeding from the inside internally, and his whole mouth, his whole gums was bleeding, and you could just see like a river of blood just going down his neck. It was really fucked up. I'll never forget the shot that they did of Mick Foley when he's in the corner and he looks at the camera and this dude is laughing his ass off. Instead of crying, this dude is laughing. He's enjoying this. He likes it. And that moment, that shot of Mick Foley smiling and laughing has been etched in professional wrestling fans' minds for the rest of time. And that's the moment where people literally looked at Mick Foley and said that this guy is, like I said, indestructible. It's like nothing could stop him. So the match continues. Mick Foley tries to pick up some steel steps. He can't because he broke his fucking arm, obviously, and he's so fucked up internally. Taker picks up steel steps, hits Mick Foley with it a few times to get to the side. Taker goes to take a leap to the outside at Mick Foley, and he hits his head against the side of the Hell in a Cell. They get back in the ring. Mick Foley somehow, someway, has enough strength to give The Undertaker a pile driver on top of the steel chair. Goes for a pinfall. 1-2, Taker kicks out. Mick Foley rolls out to the side of the ring, goes out to the outside, pulls the apron up, and retrieves a bag. He gets back in the ring, stands back up, puts his hand inside the bag, and starts dumping what's in the bag on the ring mat. Thumbtacks. This psycho son of a bitch was already in enough pain as is, and now he wanted to increase the pain even more. This crazy son of a bitch dumps an entire bag of thumbtacks all over the ring mat. And you can see everybody in the crowd getting up. Like, I don't think anybody was sitting down at that point. Everybody just got up and we're looking at this man like, are you fucking insane? You're in enough pain and you're wanting more. So he tries to knock Undertaker into the thumbtack. Undertaker's wobbling, acting like he's gonna fall, but Taker catches himself, and he goes for a tombstone pile driver. Mick Foley slips off, slips down on his back, and performs the mandible claw. Taker goes down to his feet. The referee raises Taker's arm 1, 2, and right before he could raise his arm for a third, Undertaker gains his composure, picks himself up with Mick Foley on his back, wobbles over to the thumbtacks, and then backdrops on the thumbtacks with Mick Foley on his back. And Mick Foley falls on all these thumbtacks, looking like a damn pincushion. Mick Foley, after going through these thumbtacks, gets back up to his feet. Taker grabs him and does a chokeslam to Mick Foley on top of the thumbtacks. Like smack dab right in the middle of the thumbtacks. Then Taker does his dead man pose, picks up Mick Foley one more time, tombstone pile driver, 1, 2, 3. And thus ended the greatest Hell in a Cell match of all time, and quite arguably, the greatest professional wrestling match of all time. and thus concluded, in my opinion, the greatest professional wrestling match I have ever seen in my entire life. I've been on this planet for nearly 30 years. I've seen the greatest of professional wrestling, and I've seen the worst of professional wrestling. But this match right here, to me, might just be the greatest professional wrestling match of all time that I ever got to witness. This match will live on for the rest of time. It's the reason why people remember the show. It's why people still talk about the show. This match is the reason why I'm even doing this review right now. This match was so impactful to me as a professional wrestling fan that from that night forward, all the way until the very last WCW Nitro on March 26, 2001, I watched Monday Night Raw live, start to finish. Outside of a few times where I would flip the channel to see what was going on Nitro, I started watching Raw live. I was watching Nitro live before, but after this, I flipped everything over to WWF and started watching that live and taping Nitro and watching Nitro later. This changed everything. What the WWF did here, what Mankind and The Undertaker did here, were levels of extreme that not even ECW could pull off. Not even WCW could pull this off because they weren't willing to do the type of crazy shit that the WWF was doing here at this time. Sure, they had some crazy moments here and there at WCW, but nothing to the level of what the WWF did with this match. This match was absolutely fantastic, and it will stand the rest of time forever. Like I said, there have been people who have considered pro wrestling to be fake, that think that this is the fakest shit in the entire world. They've been sit it down and put this match on. People would put this match on for them and ask them what were their thoughts on the match. And after they get done watching the match, every single time, anybody who doesn't even watch professional wrestling that considers it fake, every time they see this match, they're left with only one thing to say at the end. What I just witnessed in this match was not fake at all. That was real, that was legit, and that was cool. And these are people that don't even watch professional wrestling. People who are wanting to get into professional wrestling have seen this match, and it's the reason why they became professional wrestling fans. Which, I want to talk about that real quick, because OTRS Central brought up something in his review that kind of rings true to this very day. As legendary as this match is, as great of a match as this was, as important to the professional wrestling business as this match was, as important as it was to both the careers of Mankind and The Undertaker, this match also did a lot of damage to the professional wrestling industry. Because a lot of the people that are in the professional wrestling industry nowadays, they grew up watching this match. They were inspired by this match. They saw what Mick Foley and The Undertaker did to themselves in this match, and they thought, hey, when I grow up and be a professional wrestler, I want to do that too. And you got a bunch of people in the professional wrestling industry who are all about doing the flips and the kicks and the high aerial stuff, and they never learned about how to be a character, how to cut a promo, how to talk on the microphone, how to tell a story, how to look like a professional wrestler. All they cared about was doing the same crazy shit that Mick Foley did, without learning what it takes to be a professional wrestler, which is what Mick Foley had. He had charisma, he could talk, he played, for Christ's sake, the man played 3 gimmicks. Dude loved Cactus Jack and Mankind. 3 of the most iconic gimmicks in professional wrestling history. The man could talk, he had charisma, he could tell a story, he had amazing gimmicks. He wasn't the greatest wrestler of all time. physically in the ring. But that didn't matter because the man could tell a story in the ring with what he did. That's what mattered the most. And that's what a lot of these people in the professional wrestling industry nowadays can't fucking do. They can't tell a story in the ring. They can't talk. They have no mic skills, no charisma. They don't even look like professional wrestlers. Like, you got people in modern day professional wrestling that look like they would bag my groceries at Walmart. Seriously. Johnny Gargano. Anyways, as much as I love this match, I have to agree with OTRS on that this match did do some damage to the business because it brought a lot of people in who saw this match who did not care to learn what it takes to really be a professional wrestler, and all they want to do is the high, aerial stuff, the flips and kicks and stuff like that. But with that being said, with that out of the way, I still love this match. I will always love this match. I will always consider this my favorite match of all time. Before, my favorite match of all time was Rock vs. Austin WrestleMania 17, minus the ending, because the ending was really fucking stupid. But in terms of, start to finish, a match that had the perfect start, so many legendary moments in it, and the perfect ending, this is the match right here. There is no other grade for me to give this match other than a 10 out of 10. I can't go any higher, and I will not go any lower. This is the pinnacle of professional wrestling. This is the highest that you could go grading a professional wrestling match, in my opinion. And I rarely give a professional wrestling match a 10 out of 10. It's extremely rare for me to give a wrestling match a 10 out of 10. In order for me to give you a perfect grade, you have to be a match that not only is so damn good, it's a match that will be talked about forever in professional wrestling history. Matches like Hogan and Andre, while not the best in-ring physically, the story building up to it, the build up to it, the match, the match, the spectacle of it, that makes it a 10 out of 10. Austin versus Brett at WrestleMania 13, that's a 10 out of 10. Taker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25, that's a 10 out of 10. Taker versus Triple H Hell in a Cell WrestleMania 28, that's a 10 out of 10. Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 24, the build up to it, the story, the match itself, that's a 10 out of 10. And this match right here, Undertaker versus Mankind, is an immediate 10 out of 10. And my personal favorite match of all time. If you want a professional wrestling match to go back and watch, if you have never seen professional wrestling and you want to become a fan of it, or at least check it out, I recommend this match. Just as long as if you decide you want to enter the pro wrestling industry, please do us all a favor. Learn to have charisma. Learn to be able to talk on the microphone. Have a character. Be able to tell stories in the ring. Don't just be a guy that does flips and kicks. Please. Finn Balor. Anyways, with all that out of the way, I guess that pretty much does it for my review of King of the Ring 1998. Over an hour and a half. Almost a 2-hour-long professional wrestling review here on my channel. I admit this isn't the most professional wrestling review of King of the Ring 1998 on YouTube. This is the first time I've ever reviewed a pro wrestling pay-per-view, a show on my channel. And you know what? I actually had a lot of fun talking about this. I might consider doing this again someday. I don't know what show, But I might do this again one day if I'm in the mood. I might review another professional wrestling show. It's going to be the old stuff, because I damn sure I'm not going to sit down and watch this modern day bullshit. I cannot sit. If I even try to sit down and watch anything modern day professional wrestling nowadays, my head's going to explode. I'm going to go insane. The last thing I saw in modern day professional wrestling was the 30th anniversary of Raw. And that's it. The only people I really watch that cover professional wrestling are OTRS Central every now and again, and a channel that I like to watch called Technical Work Rate Productions. Those are the only two channels that cover professional wrestling that I still watch. I don't watch JR's podcast. I don't watch the WWE YouTube channel. I'm not subscribed to Jim Cornette anymore because Cornette has said a lot of really stupid shit as of late. That just made me... That basically like turned me away from him, and I just don't watch him when it comes to modern day professional wrestling takes anymore. I love hearing when he talks about the old school stuff, and I love hearing his rants too. But hearing him talking about modern day professional wrestling stuff, putting over a tag team like FTR, who I think is boring as fuck, just a lot of things. I don't watch Jim Cornette anymore. I don't watch Vince Russo. I don't watch What Culture. I don't watch Cultaholic. I don't watch the Smart Busters aren't even really around anymore. I don't watch any of these YouTube personalities or pro wrestling personalities outside of OTRS Central and Technical Work Rate Productions. That's it. But I had a lot of fun making this review, and I may consider reviewing professional wrestling again in the future. We'll see. If I had to give King of the Ring a grade overall, I can't give this show a 10 out of 10 because I'd be saying that every match on this show was fantastic when it was not. This was an okay show. It's definitely the most memorable King of the Ring of all time because of that one match. I think I'll give this show a 6.5 out of 10, which is a really good grade. There were some good matches on here. I really liked the Ken Shamrock versus The Rock match, the King of the Ring finals, which I considered their best match that they ever had against each other. I liked X-Pac versus Owen because of how physical Owen Hart was in that match. I thought the main event of the show was fucking stupid. The opening match was fun to watch. The stuff with Al Snow was pretty funny to go back and watch. And then, of course, we can't forget the match of the night, the Hell in a Cell match. Overall, pretty darn good pay-per-view, 6.5 out of 10. And that pretty much does it for my King of the Ring 1998 review. Not the best on YouTube, like I stated, but it is what it is. It's my first time reviewing professional wrestling on my channel, so I hope you all can, bear with me here. This was a long review. I'm going to have some editing to do before I throw this up on YouTube. And I want to get this up today while it's the 25th anniversary. So I got some work to do. With that being said, thank you all so much for watching. Edgerunner Gaming HD signing out. Peace, stay safe. Have a great rest of the day or night, and I'll see you in my next video.
They will find me through the flames, flames that run down through my veins. I will make the city burn. We're not planning to return. Trying so hard to be free, to make you see what I see. Hold on to your wishes if you can't hold on to me. Forgive me for